So, hi, and welcome to a little video I decided to make about women in Artemis Fowl. This is going to be unscripted, so if at any point I ramble on, my apologies. Now, I am a big fan of the entire series. Like, for a solid period of time, it was like all hyperfixation. However, it does have its flaws, and one of the biggest of those is how the female characters are handled. So I decided I would talk about it. Now, this video is going to have spoilers, general spoilers for the entire series, as well as spoilers for the Fowl Twins. But let's get into it. So, Book 1. Book 1 has a very male cast. Off the top of my head, I can name Holly, Angeline, Juliet as the female characters. Lily Frond is mentioned, she's kind of relevant, and Vinya is mentioned once. And I don't think there are any others. And then for the male characters, we have Root, Foaly, Artemis, Butler, Mulch, Cudgeon, Trouble, Chicks, even the two doctor guys that they bring in to analyze Artemis's behavior. Those are guys, they are meant to. Now, does this book pass the Bechdel test? Yes, but barely. So, we can thank Holly and Juliet for the fact that it passes. The first scene is when Juliet visits Holly in her cell and they talk about like food or something. And the second one is when Juliet visits Holly again and then Holly mesmerizes her. But to be honest, if this was the only scene in the book, it wouldn't get a pass because it's kind of about Artemis. I don't know, but how could we fix the issues that this book has? Well, the easiest way is to either A, introduce more characters about women, or B, just replace some of the male characters with a female character. For example, you can't really change Root or Trouble or Grub or Chicks or Cudgeon or even Artemis because it's good to have a male and female main character. You can maybe change Butler and Mulch, I don't know, but the one character who I think you could easily change to be a woman is Foaly. I don't think there's that much to his character that requires him being a guy. We know that he's friends with Holly, and if Foaly was also a woman, it would kind of even make more sense for them to be friends, because, you know, they're women and there's not that many women around them, blah blah blah. You get where I'm going with this. Now, if any other person was talking about this, they wouldn't have to address this, but I do, because if you don't know, I ship Root and Foaly. Like, I'm the #1 shipper. I love that ship, but it's gay, and would it still work if Foaly was a woman? And in my opinion, it would, and actually, more people would ship them if they were of opposite genders. That's my opinion. Also, I think they would have a higher chance of being an actual confirmed thing in the books, because, you know, heteronormativity and all that. But anyway, Book 2, The Arctic Incident. Now, does it pass the Bechdel test? I don't think it does, no. It does have a win. It has a female villain, Opal Cowboy. Now, the Arctic Incident is not the last we'll see of Opal Cowboy. A thing I will mention is that many people, at least from what I've noticed in the fandom, refer to her by her first name, Opal, whereas the male characters, the male villains, generally get referred to by their last names, Cudgeon, or Spyro, or Kronsky. Not Turnball, because you can't really call him Root, that would cause so much confusion, but Opal is Opal. Now, I searched for the uses of Opal and Cowboy in the book. Actually, Cowboy has more uses, but it's generally used when talking about Cowboy labs, so make your own conclusions here. Another thing, there's a scene in the book where Opal tells Foaly that he only won the science medal back at university because he was a man, and then that scene is sort of played for laughs and to make fun of Opal, and that's just, that doesn't make any sense because she has a point, and, you know, in general, Opal did nothing wrong up until the whole becoming evil thing. Her father was a piece of shit who treated her unfairly because she was a woman and treated her blah blah. I'm not justifying her actions in the series, but in this book and the following ones, However, I felt it was necessary to point this one thing out. Editing me here. Book 2 also has the issue of the goblins. It's kind of like this weird goblin racism that all goblins are bad people. Yeah. Book 3, The Eternity Code. So, this book introduces 4 new bad guys, and they are all male. John Spyro, Arno Blunt, his bodyguard or something, and then Pex and Chips. They're all male. Now, does this book pass the Bechdel test with all the new male characters it introduces? Actually, yes, and I think it does it quite well. So, there's a scene at the start of the book with Juliet and Madame Co. And it's sort of like Juliet's bodyguard test or whatever, I don't know. And Juliet and Holly chat a few times later. So, actually, a lot of credit to this book because there are a lot of awesome Juliet moments. Juliet is overall just awesome, isn't she? Yeah. So, I just had to take a break in recording because it was pouring rain outside, but I'm back with book 4, The Opal Deception. Does it pass the Bechdel test? Yeah. There's a scene when Opal contacts Holly in chapter 4 and is like about to kill her and blah blah and yaps about her plans. So it means that the book passes. However, noteworthy fact, I checked and there are about 370 uses of Opal and 170 of Cowboy, so this book definitely calls Opal by her first name more. Next, book 5, The Lost Colony. I am a big fan of this book. It's so much fun, and I have a lot to say about this one. So it introduces a new female character, Minerva Paradiso, and also we get to see more of Commander Rain Vinaya. But does it pass the Bechdel test? I don't think it does. I'm not sure. I kind of skimmed through it and I can't think of any scenes where it would pass. For example, Holly and Vinaya have conversations, however, they're more about Artemis and what he's doing with demons and all that, so that doesn't count for the purposes of the Bechdel test. Minerva is a character I like, but I have heard that in the fandom she is, or at least used to be, disliked. Can't really speak on that, I don't know. She's kind of a female version of Artemis, which I can see definitely. But I like her because even though she is like a genius, she's also still very much a 12-year-old, which was just, it's so much fun to read about. But anyway, the main problem with Minerva, in my opinion, is that she's forgotten about after this book. What are we doing? What are we doing? Anyway, let's talk about Vinaya. She is incredibly cool. Like, she is the only competent person on the council. I love her. She's also the hottest woman in the series, but that's besides the point. But at this point, I would like to address a sort of issue. The thing is, the men in the series, they all have very distinct personalities. You think of Foaly, Julius, Trouble, Artemis, Butler, they are all very distinct. And with the female characters, I feel like they are more similar to one another. There's like these really cool women. We have Holly and Juliet and aforementioned Vinaya, and I love them. I still love them very much, but I think we can agree that they are similar in several ways. And then there's ones that we're kind of pitted against, such as Opal, who just acts ridiculous a lot of the time, and also Lily Frond. Speaking of Lily Frond, she's very much the dumb blonde stereotype. At least that's how Holly describes her, and we never even get to see Lily Frond as far as I know, and it's a shame, honestly. And I love how the fandom handles Lily Frond. The fandom treats Lily Frond actually quite nicely. Another character book 5 introduces is Kabaline. She's like a journalist, she's kind of cool, but I don't like her. The main reason for that is she exists solely to be a love interest for Foaly. And might I point out, we wouldn't have this issue of her being introduced just to be a love interest if this series actually had a decent number of female characters. Also, the Ruth and Foaly thing, as a Ruth and Foaly shipper, I will find explanations for Kabbalion being a thing, but she still feels out of place. And okay, I don't want to say Ruth and Foley was queerbait, but sort of feels like it sometimes. I don't know. This is besides the point of the video, so we'll move on. Also, final note about book 5. Did number 1 have to be a guy? Okay, that was a long segment. Let's move on to book 6, The Time Paradox. Does it pass the Bechdel test? I'm not sure. Maybe? It seems like it doesn't. My memory is hazy. Now, some people have pointed out that after book 4, Holly kind of loses some of her personality and the books focus more on Artemis himself, which I personally have never noticed, but I want to bring up 2 things in this thing's defense. Number 1, Artemis is the titular character, and number 2, I've always felt that the first half of the series focused more on the characters and the second half focused more on the adventure, so I'm not too mad about Holly losing some of the spotlight. The second thing, this is the 3rd time we see Opal Cowboy, and Colfer really fumbled with her. She's the only female villain in Artemis Fowl, but she's so overused and acts so ridiculous, we as the readers, at least me personally, can't stand her, and so not really great rep with the women there. But that is all I have to say about this book. I trailed off there, I think. I wasn't really sure what to say, but let's move on to book 7, The Atlantis Complex. Does it pass the Bechdel test? Yes. When Holly and Samsonite are fighting, they talk a little bit, and Juliet overall is really cool in this one. And another thing, this book introduces a new female character, Leonor. Similarly to Kabbalion, she's only introduced to be a love interest, but I like her a lot more as a character or a plot device even, because she is the reason for everything, not everything, but for a lot of what Turnball does, and so it actually makes sense for her to exist. Finally, book 8, The Last Guardian. Does it pass the Bechdel test? No idea. Maybe? I really don't know. I will say that it has quite a few female characters, which still less than the male. There's Opal again, Holly, Juliet. She is a babysitter for the twins and not really pursuing her wrestling career at the moment, which I think is reasonable because, the twins do need someone to babysit, and it's not like she's gonna be stuck in that position forever. And there's also Opal. I think it's fine. I mean, fairly standard for the series. We could have had more female characters, but that goes for all of the books. Now, before we move on to the Fowl Twins, quick recap about the Seventh Dwarf and Leprechaun. Neither of them passed the Bechdel test. The Fowl Twins. Wow, that trilogy is weird. I want whatever Colfer was on while writing it because it's diabolical at some point. I'm also gonna stop doing the Bechdel tests now because I cannot be bothered anymore. But okay, we have more issues, more wins. Did the twins have to be male? Is my first question. I don't think they did. This book also introduces another male villain, but also there is a female villain. The acronym nun, what's her name? Geronima. She was dope as hell. Yeah, I think she was cool. And then there's Lazuli Heights. Oh my gosh. She's kind of fun, but the main issue with her is she's Holly 2.0, and not in the way that Trouble Kelp is Julius Ruth 2.0. No, she's just kind of, not quite copy-pasted, but so many similar things. Holly and Lazuli are both orphans, they're both kind of troublemakers in the lab, and also they're kind of not trailing behind, but getting involved with the fowls. She's not very distinct. But anyway, another thing, speaking of Holly, this book tells us as readers that Holly, she's not a rule breaker anymore. She's very much by the book now, which I don't buy. It feels so out of character, especially at the end of the book. They want to mind wipe the Fowl Twins, and Holly, of all people, should know better to not do that. because, you know, she's been there. That's my thoughts on the first Fowl Twins book. And now, Denial Charges, the second Fowl Twins book. And actually, it handles the women really well. So, Gweld and Gundred Horteknut were actually, in my opinion, very well written, and I think, as far as I can remember, they were taken seriously, and I was glad to see more female villains. They were calling each other sister, but honestly, it was kind of gay, so do with that information what you will. And now, get what they deserve, the third Fowl Twins book. And it has two major wins. We get to see Minerva Paradiso again. Yippee! And actually, I think she's handled really well. What I like is that she has a kid. It brings some diversity into the series because I believe she's the second female character in the series confirmed to have children. It's kind of nice to have someone who isn't the holy Juliet Vinia type. Also, this book has a trans win. There's a scene where one of the female characters, Daphne, says, "A princess who walks, talks, and speaks like a duke," and she's like, "Isn't that gonna be weird?" And Beckett says, "Kids these days don't care about stuff like insets and outsets matching," which is really nice to see. Is it a trans win? I think it's a trans win. People have said that it's a trans win, so I'm gonna count it as a trans win. But that concludes the video. I hope it made you think, brought you to some conclusions. I think Colfer really dug his own grave with the concept, because Holly being the only female leprechaun officer is kind of a cool concept, and it could have been so empowering, but if she's surrounded by so many men in the lab, we need to bring in more female characters that are not officers. You know, I've heard that Colfer tends to handle female characters not that well in general. For example, in Airman, I've heard that it doesn't do the women justice. I can't comment on that. I've never read it, but you know, I thought I'd point that out. I also have not read the books in a while, so correct me if anything's wrong in this video. I skimmed through them, especially for the Bechdel test stuff, but the rest is from memory. I would also like to say once again that I am a big fan of the series, but I wanted to point out the issues, and yeah, that's about it. I have not recorded like any videos, any voiceovers in years, so if my voice sounds weird, my apologies. I'm gonna stop rambling now. Yeah, bye.